Hi, Christiana. Hi. So amazing to have you here. And thank you so much for finding time and space for this podcast. I remember when I met you, I just felt that magnetism that was coming naturally from you. And I truly believe that you are the person that I would like to know the story about. And when we were playing here one day, human design game, you've also revealed a bit of a traumatic story. hmm And yeah, I would like to dig into it as well. And yeah,
Um, we actually just spoke a little bit about it. Well, sometimes sharing your story and feeling that it might be too much and thinking about the receiver. I think for me, um, some traumatic events that I went through in my life, I always say I almost wear them like a diamond necklace, because I feel if you wear them openly, that's part of the healing process as well. So I'm always really open to talk about it because I also believe that other people's stories can be medicine. And in my case, it's something that happened now 7 years ago. And I always refer to it as the day my earth stood still. And it is one of those moments, where, I mean, the blink of an eye is a quarter of a second. But in the blink of an eye, a lot can happen and innocence of life can be taken. And um, the mundane moment can turn into a complete bloodbath. And it's something that I witnessed that day. Um, I was on Ramblas in Spain, which is a famous shopping street. And I was on the phone with a girlfriend. And again, we were talking about the mundaneest thing of the mundane. She wanted to I think she wanted to borrow my backpack. And we were talking about how many liter fits in there. And it was a really nice, peaceful conversation. And out of the blue, I started screaming. And she said, that scream of yours, it really, I've never heard something that frequency on my life. It just cut through my flesh, through my bones. And the only thing I said was, everybody dead. She was crying, what are you talking about? And I just could only repeat several times, everybody's dead. And then I just hang up the phone. And in that moment, she thought that I went into a psychosis, and she started frantically calling people like there's something completely wrong with Christiana. And those are the kind of moments where you wish I would have went into a psychosis, because it would mean that it was not me that was going. It would have been better if I was going mad than the world was going mad. You know what I mean? But unfortunately, it was insanity of the world in that moment. And um, right in front of my eyes, there was a bus that went through the Ramblas, and kind of like Mario Kart style, tried to grabbing bananas, but trying to grab as many bodies as it could. It was right in front of my door, and there were like two market stools, flowers, and that was as well the place where most people died because they couldn't jump left or right.
so was it the bus crashing?
Yes, yeah. Oh, well, the bus didn't crash there, but it stopped there actually. I don't actually know why. I try to research as well a lot of things afterwards, but the bus stopped there, and it was where the victims were mostly as well. So in that moment, um, they started shouting that the bus was going to explode, that it had explosive, and it was chaos everywhere. And there was it was just a sea of wounded people. It was almost like a Jenga tower of bodies just being stacked up. And of course, there's kind of like an evacuation plan in this high traffic areas. So it was really weird to see pure chaos, and me as well running up and down actually my house, because I was living on the first floor, and thinking in that moment, because I thought it's gonna explode, and do I need to be inside, or is the glass going to kill me when it explodes? It's like a really surreal kind of moment. And it was chaos, and then it was just pure silence. because there is an evacuation plan. Everybody got like went into shops. The blinds were closed, and then the wounded got taken away as well very fast. And I just remember in that moment sitting on my balcony, which was like this little tray hanging over this bloodbath, and basically just looking at all these dead bodies.
So was it the bomb initially in the bus and it exploded?
So finally, I think it was a story like they wanted to have explosives in the bus, but there was a reason why they didn't. I mean, otherwise I wouldn't be sitting here today anymore, I guess. But the bus just, yeah, it tried to hit as many people as possible. So the people died from the bus hitting them because they couldn't go left and right.
So the bus was literally riding on the streets, and
it was riding on it's yeah, I think you don't know the Ramlas. Like it's it's only for passengers. It's like a shopping street.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it's not a street. Yeah. Yeah. So it's you cannot enter there as well with your car. So it ended there, and it just yeah, I mean it killed 14 people, out of which as well a 7-year-old boy, you know, which was just, I mean, could saw contours of his body, but I couldn't really see him, which I'm quite thankful for, actually, you know. And I was sitting there on my balcony, and I remember being in shock. So I started texting people pictures of the dead bodies, like in groups apps, which of course is very strange. But it wasn't out of a sensation kind of thing. It was more like out of a certain loneliness. Like I can't grasp what I'm seeing right in front of me. Like somebody help me make sense out of this, you know?
The reaction to that shock.
But just a direct reaction to the shock. And then it lasted like hours and hours, and everything was shut down, and was the military and everything. And they first thought that they were in my building, the two terrorist attackers. There was like snipers on my roof and everything. Everything was just like really, really surreal. And then there was this silence, this other silence. And I remember looking down, and right under my balcony was an old lady. I know now that her name is Pepita. She was in her 70s. And
did she also witness it?
Well, she was dead.
Oh, she was dead.
Yeah. And she laid like face down, and she was directly under my balcony, and she was surrounded by oranges. She had these groceries in her hand when the attack happened, and it was so surreal because the wind started blowing all the groceries, so there was like oranges everywhere. And then you're looking at somebody like it just the fragility of life, that somebody was preparing dinner for their loved ones, and that never is going to reach the table, you know. And yeah, it was a completely surreal scene. That's something as well that you know that you will carry with you, you know. It's
And how did you overcome that? Like, how did it affect you over years?
I remember the day after, actually. Like it's interesting because I remember the day after, there was this guy from the BBC that was climbing our balcony because we had like the front seat of it all, and there was like this big monument with flowers, and the king came, and FC Barcelona came, and lots of things were happening, and he was climbing my balcony, and I looked into his eyes, and he was there to support a headline, you know, one man's death is another man's bread, I guess. And I saw this lust for life in his eyes, and I just completely lost mine. But I did promise myself directly the next day that I wanted to walk the pavement, because it was also in front of my door. And I didn't want that to control me. I mean, that pavement for me is drenched in blood, but I need to, you know? So that's what I did actually directly the day after. Then it's really weird because the flowers keep on coming and everything. It's really much alive. And then there comes a day when a truck comes and takes away the last flowers, you know? But of course, for me, that is a very heavy coat that I'm going to wear of grief, you know? And it's interesting to see those contrasts. But I think what helped me a lot afterwards is that if we look at the stages of grief, like there is the first stage of denial and la la, and then at one point you come to acceptance of it. And I think the last scene is giving meaning to it. Of the last stage is also giving meaning to it, you know, which gave me a lot of peace. I mean, you have survivor's guilt. You think on the one hand, why me? Why was I there? And on the other hand, you think, why not me? Like, why am I still here? You know? So that's like a roller coaster ride of emotions that you definitely go through. But yeah, in all these stages, I will not say that it's a gift. I know that's quite a popular thing about to say of trauma, like it's a gift and a lesson, and blah, blah, blah. I don't really view it that way. It's also not an exorcism that I can just let go of it. Like it's gonna be there, it's gonna be present. I'm not gonna let it control me. I'm gonna slow dance with it. And I did give it meaning. I did take things from it as well, you know?
So what was the meaning for you?
Well, it taught me some things. I think it taught me kindness. There is a poem that I actually read yesterday, which is crazy because it's eerily connected. And it says something along the lines of, um, how do we understand kindness? To understand kindness, men must lose things.
Mm-hmm.
Men must see its future dissolve like a salt in a weakened broth. Men must see the Indian lay dead next to the roads to understand that that could be him. To understand as well that the Indian next to the road had plans mapped out for him. Only then we can understand that only kindness makes sense, and that kindness is what makes us tie our shoes and uh, is with us like a shadow of a friend. I was like, wow. I mean, the similarities are quite shocking, but I think it taught me kindness. It taught me that I'm not gonna let darkness, because we're all gonna go through these kind of things. I'm not gonna let it overshadow the beauty that I also see in life. I'm not gonna be filled with hatred and anger towards the terrorist attackers, because I feel that condemnation would be too easy. Like, look at them like they are evil and that has nothing to do with me. I believe that we as humans are good and bad. We're beasts, and we are ethics. We are starlight, and we're flesh, and we are sober and drunk, and we're many things, you know. And that's both very beautiful. It's mind-bogglingly beautiful, and it's also a bloody nightmare. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I look at it. Perhaps a place of understanding would not be the right wording, because I don't proof of what they did. I can't find any justification of what they did. I looked at somebody that just murdered a 7-year-old kid, you know? Like, you need to come to terms with that. But there's also, but
Mm.
yeah, like how they do with the experiment in prison that you might know in America, where you have the prisoners and they're in a circle and they're all serial killers and whatever they have done in their lives. And then this woman asks, like, which one of you has been raised by only one parent? And then everybody steps in a circle. Which one of you has had a parent that was drunk? Everybody steps in a circle. Which one of you was abused by their parents? Everybody steps in a circle. So it kind of, for me, makes it understand more that there is not this kind of pure evil, and that it's not that black and white, you know?
So it's the environment that is shaping our personality.
Mm-hmm.
And the person who was born in a family where it was violence and probably parents um, abusive, addicted to drugs or alcohol,
Yeah.
it must have affected, right?
I think we all carry that darkness inside of us.
Mm-hmm.
There's a point in life where we choose to go left or right, and choose for the right path or not, you know? But I don't dehumanize them completely and like paint them as these big monsters. So I think as well that for me brought kind of like a new light on who we are as human beings, you know? Plus, I also believe firmly, actually, that there's a greater scheme of things. So, for example, if your dog stands on a nail in his paw and you take him to the vet, And the dog is there, and he sees the vet coming up to him with an injection needle to put the anesthesia. For the dog, it's only the boogeyman, you know? Because the dog doesn't understand that when I understand from the sidelines that it's for the good and that afterwards the dog is going to feel better, etc. Like there's a bigger picture, there's a bigger scheme of things, you know? And I believe that, well, yeah, sometimes we don't see the bigger picture and what it is going to bring us in some sort of way. How I mean, it's a paradox. It's an unending paradox that darkness can also bring beautiful things, you know? Um,
So when you looked at the tragedy and some of those people have been your neighbors, right? As that old lady you've mentioned.
no,
Or is it, how did you know her name?
so they're not people that I know because actually it's a tourist street. So there were a lot of tourists just passing by, and there's a lot of market stalls with souvenirs and stuff like this. But for me, I think there is a moment in the whole process where I'm on that balcony and where they start zipping up body bags, which kind of took away the human for me. So in the process after all that happened, I started to research as well the people. I started to learn to know their names and what they were doing there. I knew there was the couple that was celebrating their anniversary, and the wife went to the toilet and came back and, yeah, unfortunately lost her husband. I looked up the pictures of the 7-year-old kid, you know, he had like such a cheeky smile, and as well, that's how they described him and everything. And I wanted to know more about them to somehow that gave me a little bit of peace, you know?
So if you know it's not just a cold body, empty of
Yeah,
life, but
yeah,
actually life was happening just like a
yeah,
minute ago. So,
yeah,
and suddenly it's just a body.
yeah,
It is just a vessel.
yeah,
And what's the story of that body, literally?
yeah,
Who was there?
yeah, yeah. And it's
Mm.
it's really thought I was insane for a while as well, to be really honest. Because I had like on my phone, I had a file with some of the pictures of the bodies, and I didn't erase them. And I didn't understand myself. Like, why do I carry that around on my phone? Like, it's weird. And then I listened to, again, other people's stories can be medicine. I listened to a podcast with a guy that was present during the Paris attacks in the concert building in Bataclan. And he said, I still carry around the number of my jacket of that night, of the wardrobe. And he said to me, that gives me the feeling that I can grasp that really happened. That was reality, you know? And then I was like, this is again the sense of loneliness, of not making sense what is happening, and kind of making it like graspable, and thereby allowing myself to heal in the kind of things. Yeah.
And how long did the grieving process take
I think it will
you?
go on till my deathbed, actually. I mean, it's kind of illusion that there's this exorcism thing, like we just let go or something one day and we wake up and we feel healed. I mean, it's something that I definitely carry with me, but I have kind of acceptance. I gave it a place. I'm finding meaning in it. Um, but yeah, it's, I mean, I've done quite some hypnotherapy as well. And I find,
Around that to
yeah,
release
around this
that?
theme.
Mhm.
And I find myself being on the Ramlas, going to each and every one of the bodies and apologizing, which is, of course, not my place. I mean, I'm also a victim in all of this, but I do find myself apologizing maybe for uh, not having lived, or maybe just telling them I'm gonna live life, you know? Like,
So it's like a reassurance for yourself,
yeah,
that you are going to live your life to the fullest, that
yeah.
you were giving a chance. And as,
No, I kind of owe
do
them
you
that.
feel
Yeah,
guilty
y-
that you
yeah, like,
did survive?
yeah, you do. Yeah,
You did feel
yeah.
guilty.
When
So
you look at a
mhm.
picture of a 7-year-old kid, that's just like, yeah,
So it made you question, why me?
hmm, yeah,
Why I actually didn't die? Why them? Right?
yeah,
It's
yeah,
just
100%.
um,
Yeah,
14 people, and there is
Yeah.
a boy who didn't get the chance to
Yeah.
leave much.
Yeah.
And
Isn't it funny how we, in life, we almost need to have that scare, like to live life to the fullest. Like we human beings, we want to have
yes,
a story with a beginning, a middle, and an ending, because then it's like your summer love. When you go on holidays and you fall in love and you embrace it to the fullest and you feel it in your bones because you know you're going to get back home. You know, you're going to go back to your boring life. And but the crazy thing is, like, why do I need to go to something like that to make my life feel like that's summer love, summer holiday, you know? Because we already know that we are going to die. We just don't know the date. I mean, that's all, you know?
it's very true. Since the moment we are born, we are destined to die.
Yeah.
However, do we use the time that was given to us
Mm-hmm.
the best way? Do we
Yeah.
use our gifts? Do we expand in becoming greater? What do we do with that time, right?
Yeah.
So I guess you facing the death, being in that moment where the death is like literally by your side,
Yeah.
had affected you and your life.
In the
Is it only in a bad way, or is anything that you found positive about it?
No, it's definitely in a way like in the face of death, you feel alive.
Yeah.
And that's a big paradox. I'm a big fan of Bukowski, and he writes, you can't be death, but you can be death in life, you know? So I think that's something that I walked away with that is definitely that's positive for me, you know? And it's also the kind of thing like if we have these two lives, we have the life that we're living and we have this unlived life within us as well, because we are influenced by society's whispers or your inner critic, self doubts or whatever it is. I think this is a kind of moment where you do feel like I don't have that luxury, you know? I need to live that life that I'm supposed to live. So that's definitely something that you walk away with. Yeah.
And it's something that you take your drive, your strength from on every day.
Yes. It's
Yeah.
for me the base definitely of my creativity. Like I write a lot of poetry. I try to make documentaries, you know? Yeah, it's kind of like this, you're being, they shake you awake, you know? Like that is definitely something that's part of that. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. It's an amazing story. Very sad. And on the other side, it just life, right? It's
Yeah.
just the reminder of being always present and aware that death is inevitable and it can get you one day. So,
And it's also just the acceptance that, I mean, if we look at the term utopia, it's called no place. It doesn't exist because life is going to have that duality of fear and rejection, but also of joy and beautiful moments. You know, it exists of that duality. And would we want it to be only joy? I don't think so. You know, so there is the movie Life of Pi. I don't know if you've seen that one.
I don't
It's a
think.
little kid that comes with a big tiger and he comes to an island. And on this island, there is only beauty. So the plants are edible, the water is flowing everywhere, the animals are only kind to him. And what he notices as long as he's staying there is that the island is actually carnivorous. The island eats itself. And it's kind of like a metaphor for, again, you know, for us as human beings, we need to go to pain, etc., to find certain growth. You know, our past pain is as well our wisdom in the present. Um, and I really, I agree with that. You know, enlightenment is not running away from the fact that the world is going to give us harsh things. You know, it's just accepting that there is this duality and letting them both sit at your table and feast. I mean, that's finally just what it is. So
Was this story, this tragedy, somehow motivated you to make your first documentary?
Um, yes, it actually did because I like I said already before, like telling people stories, and for me, seeing the story of another survivor and like finding a little piece of myself in somebody else is there is such beauty in that, you know? So that definitely motivates me to make art. And usually everything I do is somehow based as well on my personal story. And it's healing for me, it's healing for the receiver, you know? It's also beautiful. Like when you make something, I actually want to make as well a documentary about terrorist attack survivors. But it's beautiful because you create this shell actually, and the receiver finally puts their heart into it because you co-create something because they give meaning to it, you know? And I really love that concept. I also really believe that in my life, in dark situations, my creativity and my imagination has always been a thing that pulled me through that. Um, because I believe that if you create something in your mind, which in some aspects, I mean, I'm now talking about creating art like that's more rooted in trauma, but sometimes as well, when you're in a dark reality and you create something in your mind that's joyous, and then you actually bring it to life, it affects that dark reality as well, you know?
So a good storytelling can affect other people, right?
I believe that there's a lot of people that didn't pull the trigger because they are creating, because they are taking that brush or that pen and they are just creating, you know? So it's also beautiful that when you dream, and you dream, for example, you're going to be rich, you don't wake up with money in your hands, you know? But when you dream about a song that you never heard before, so you create it in your dream and then you wake up humming it, you know? Like that says so much about creativity and how beautiful that is. So for me, creativity is a matter of life and death. Like it's a survival. If all the other things in society with law and medicine and whatever is to sustain life, then this is something that really creates life. It
Mhm.
keeps us alive, you know?
Yeah, I
Mm.
also believe creativity keeps our soul alive
Yeah,
because through creativity, our soul can really express itself
yeah, yeah,
and the beauty that comes within, right? As you
yeah,
have mentioned, either music or
yeah,
a documentary or a beautiful art.
yeah,
So many things is coming out of it. And we do use a lot of creativity on every day as well
yeah,
in our lives, right?
yeah,
We do use a lot of creativity at work
yeah,
when we are playing human design game, doing so many other things. We just keep forgetting about how important role it plays in our life.
yeah. You know how I always say as well that being creative is not listening to the voices outside, but your voice within. If you're really expressing from something that's deep, you know? So it also really brings you in touch with yourself and who you are. And it kind of makes it possible to shed all that's not relevant, you know? And that's a
Yeah,
beautiful process.
it's like a connection instead of connecting to your mind that always kind of pushes you forward, tells you all those things, creates FOMO, fear
Yeah.
of missing out, right? And other things that you need to rush, you need to do things.
Yeah.
While if you are connecting to the heart, and I do believe intuition is there, creativity is there because
Yeah.
your soul is there,
Yeah.
then you can fully navigate your life from the right place and then the creativity expands and then you find yourself doing amazing projects.
Yeah.
Suddenly you know your path.
It's a beautiful, I always say creativity is like our rebellion. It's our personal rebellion, you know, like standing up. And I mean, for example, I grew up in an orphanage and a very, very dark situation. And I think my first act of creativity was that I started rewriting the rules of a Monopoly game. And I started to just rearrange it. And then from there, I started to really design my own board games. And again, I have something in my mind that's joy or joyous. and then it becomes reality, and I think that's a very beautiful thing to teach you that we can reshape our realities.
It's an amazing tool.
Yeah.
That is given to us. And if you're really in a bad situation of your life, as you've mentioned, and I know a little bit of your story because we did a private session, and then the hypnotherapy with me, you've mentioned about it. And having that environment that you've had a chance to experience, that you were almost forced, let's say, experience and be in, where you've said you had to lock the doors to the bedroom and many children did not feel safe.
Yeah.
I do admire, actually you being in that situation, being that child, coming out with something that gives you almost a hope to a better life. How would you call it?
Yeah. I, yeah, growing up in an orphanage is basically just a very toxic, loveless, growing up under toxic, loveless roof, I would call it, So there are these caretakers and they come every 24 hours. Then they have a book, they write in it, did Christiana eat her vegetables or not, etc. And they pass it on to the next. And then they go home to their warm families. But you're basically stuck there in a situation where it's always unsafe. You need to barricade your door at night to not get raped. That's just reality. But there are so many moments, like we have in Holland, we have a game that we play. I don't know if they do that everywhere in the world, by the way, but maybe you can tell me that when we come home from a school trip and our parents are waiting for you at the school doors, everybody's hiding underneath the couches. And then the parents go like, oh, the kids didn't come back. What happened to them? And then they're searching in the bus. And it's always a game that's played. And it goes from generation to generation that everybody plays the same game. And I know that for me, that game was awful because I knew I was hiding under the couch and I knew that nobody was waiting for me. So there is just these moments where there is just like complete loneliness. And this was something that pulled me through. And I always as well, like I used to steal people's library passes because I knew my intellect is going to be my way out of here. And then I would be this little kid with this bike with all these books that I could hardly carry, but I was so destined because I knew like society had written me off. Like anybody that grows up in an orphanage, I knew that no school would accept me because they thought I would be an influence on a bad influence. And I was like, here I am, a kid that doesn't have any future, or at least it's being told to her, you have no future, you have no value to society.
And at what age did you understand that?
I think it was not so much the understanding, but you can feel it in your bones.
Okay.
So you already know at age 10 how that works.
That you're different.
Yes.
That was
Oh, yeah. And of course, you're the kid without the parents, and parents don't want kids to play at your place because you're the kid from the orphanage. So, of course, you have this stigma. It's written on your forehead. But as little as I was, I knew that that was not going to define me. And it was a little bit of a toxic driver for me later in life because I felt such need to be seen and heard and to not be that orphanage kid. And I got a lot of success of that in certain aspects in my life, but they have a toxic driver at the end. So there was a process that I needed to go through. But I think for me, I had a lot of luck. When I was 15, I got adopted by two aunts. And I mean, I was abandoned by my mother when I was 10, which is kind of like, that's a big wound.
Yeah.
I think there's some big wounds in life, whether you are abandoned by your parents or losing a child, that are big ones. And they adopted me. And that kind of like, I always say that was my rebirth, that gave me a chance to a new life. And I would not be sitting here right now if it was not for these two women.
Do you believe you might not have been as successful as you are?
No, and I think as well, there's a process where I come from such a cold environment going into the loving arms of two ladies that basically, they always used to like, when I woke up, there was a napkin on my plate that said, "I hope you slept well." And then they both would sign it. When I would go to bed, there would be a post-it on the mirror with "Sweet dreams," you know? But in the beginning, if you come from a house that's burning, you think the whole world is on fire. So I needed to go through that process as well, you know,
The adaptation.
yeah, from being not accepted or being unworthy for anything, basically, to coming to this loving place where I was being told every day that I'm worthy, you know?
It must have been uneasy to receive love
Yes.
when you did not receive
I didn't think so, but of course now in having conversations with them, of course I understand, you know?
Mhm.
So but you know, it's really beautiful because my mother abandoned me. She cut the navel cord in such a brutal way, but love comes back in other shapes. Um, there is this really beautiful story about Kafka, the novelist, where he goes to the park every day. He meets a girl. She loses a doll. Okay. Um, they start to search for it. They cannot find it. And she is just inconsolable. She's crying because she wants that doll. So he starts writing her letters as if he was the doll that say, "I'm exploring the world. Don't cry for me. I'm just out there exploring, you know?" And then so they come back to the park every day. They share, he gives her the letter. Yeah, he gives her the letter. And then one day he gives her another doll. And she holds it in her hands and she looks at it crying and she says, "But that's not her, you know?" And then he writes another letter that says, "My travels changed me for the best." So she embraces the doll. She goes home, and he dies short after. So it's true. It's not a story actually.
It's a life story
yeah,
from Kafka.
from Kafka.
Mhm.
And then she opens the doll, and there's a letter in it, the last letter of the doll, and it says, "In life we will lose our loved ones, but love will come back in another shape or form." And for me, were those ants, you know? And there's a kind of unconditional love when you have the most ugly drawing in the world that you just drew, but your parents look at it like it's the Mona Lisa, which I thought I'm never gonna have that. They did actually. So it saved my life. Yeah. Mm.
Oh, I'm deeply touched
Mm.
with
Mm.
that story. Oh, and both of your aunties were psychologists or
One of
the
them was a
therapists?
psychotherapist, or is actually, luckily.
Mhm.
Uh, so yeah, I had some sessions as well for breakfast. Let's put it in this way, in terms of reflection and everything.
So you were looked, excuse me. You were looked well after by them, giving you
Yeah,
love and at the same time undergoing therapy, right?
yeah.
And where is your base now? I know you're staying for a couple of months in Bali. I know you're going to travel to South
Vietnam?
Africa.
Yeah, yeah,
And I do know you're from Netherlands
yeah,
and that you also work and have your business in
yeah.
Ibiza.
Sometimes I have a little bit of an identity crisis to fit all the pieces of the puzzle together. I'm half Portuguese, I'm half Dutch. So yeah, I've been living in Spain now for quite some years. I have my business there in Ibiza. I run an event company. And that's also like, I guess there's a lot of beautiful legacy of what I went through, a lot of drive that has been bottled up inside me from that orphanage, you know, that I translate into running a successful business. So,
And you did make your life story quite successful because of what was happening to you on the way, right? And I see that you are really well read, like you have mentioned, and I understand now where you've got all that knowledge.
yeah, that is from me on the bike trying to carry those heavy books. But it's really funny that I always say my spirituality is sprinkled with street wisdom because that's the raw life that we go through as
Knowledge of
well.
life, yeah.
And I have resilience. I know how to read people. I many times know their intentions. Sometimes if they don't even know it themselves yet, you know, and that's as well something that I really took from that time. So those are all qualities, of course, to build something beautiful as well. And it's up to us if I'm going to decide, is my heart going to be this graveyard or is it going to be a garden? What am I going to bury in there? What's going to be in that soil, you know? And I personally choose that it's this beautiful, lush garden, you know? Um, so yeah, and it's beautiful as well to have a company where people believe in me. Like there was a time in life where nobody did believe in me, and I think it's also a choice to feed the narrative and to also not believe in myself, or to have this great act of rebellion and not buy into that. With a little bit of help along the way from beautiful aunts.
So running this incredible business and being successful as a woman, how do you navigate in a world that is, especially business world, that is
Yeah.
more dominated by men and masculine energy?
It's not, yeah, you say it right, because it's not only the masculine energy is not bound by flesh or gender, of course, as we know, but it's definitely just male dominated. I think I'm the only one actually looking at partners, etc. I'm the only female, and I must say, it's been a roller coaster ride in that regard. I'm going to be really brutally honest here. I started my business definitely coming from a place of fear, very toxic masculine energy, because I thought I am female. I was buying into the narrative, kind of. So when I was in meetings with my business partner, I always used to almost count how many times they would find eye contact with them and with me. And I mean, the answer was quite shocking. So of course we know already about inequality for salaries, etc. But besides that, like you feel that in your bones that it has less weight of being a woman in this business. So when I started this business, I kind of felt like I needed to overcompensate that. And that translated into this um, anxiety induced hustle culture, where it was all about competing. Everybody was competing with everybody. Um, I was afraid to show my vulnerability because I saw that as a weakness. I was basically just sitting there on my throne or in my ivory tower, trying to lead, and yeah, it was more about dominating than collaborating. If people were undermining my authority, or I thought that they were minding their authority, I would silence them. And I think there has been a flip the script at one point where I decided to go a completely different way. I think as well, COVID was good for that, because in COVID, I mean, I work in the event industry and in tourism. So I was definitely taking some blows with COVID. And I remember calling the staff and saying, we need to close the doors because the borders are closed. It's over, you know? And I remember just breaking down and crying in front of them. And I know that before, that would have been, for me, I would have perceived that like a weakness. And I would have think, oh my God, how am I going to have the authority tomorrow? But it only brought me closer to them. I showed them that I'm also human, and it became a much more relational kind of thing, and it gave much more soul. And if you give it much more soul as well, it can be with, I mean, I was leading without having fun. I was suffocating myself. So I learned more how to bring in the fun. And I had a presentation a few years ago where the first sheet normally on a big projector would have been, okay, the objectives for upcoming year and numbers and stuff. And I actually opened with two pictures, one of me as a happy child, smiling, red cheeks, and then one of me being in the orphanage, looking like somebody that has just lost the will to live. And I just projected those on the screen, and I said, okay, this is where I come from in business. This is as well why you believing in me is the greatest good. It has nothing to do with status or money, because I value and cherish that so much. And the things I do, I mean, they always think you are this kind of big bad wolf that is only there for the money, you know what I mean? But there's something overarching that's so big, and I wanted to give them as well that message. So I feel like I'm not there yet. I mean, it's as well work in progress to an eternity, I guess. But I am definitely, yeah, changing that up, stirring that toxic masculine pot up. Yeah.
Yeah, and we do need in life to accomplish and achieve. We do need both energies. We do need masculine and feminine, right? It's just about how to balance it and find the way when you're not staying too much in
Yeah.
masculine, being a woman, and I guess other way around.
There's healthy masculine, because healthy masculine doesn't try to destroy what he can control or try to silence what he cannot control. Healthy masculine is about collaboration. So the healthy masculine initiates, is the one that protects everybody when things are collapsing and stuff. And it's beautiful. Those are beautiful traits, but it doesn't need to be at the expense of the rest, of the fun, of the soul, of the. So, yeah, it's been a wild ride. But
Yeah, being a woman in the world that we live in right now, with all the agenda about anti-aging, when the products are imposed on us and looking beautiful and youthful is the number one priority on the list. That's what I see a lot scrolling social media. How do you feel that ageism is affecting you?
well, I would love to sit here right now and say that I'm numb to it, but I'm a slave to it completely. Unfortunately, um, it's hurtful that when I look in the mirror, like I look at those crow's feet instead of looking at, I mean, I always have swords in my eyes, like those are eyes that even in the darkest days, they refuse to give up hope. Yet that's not what I see. And if I see wrinkles, I'm thinking like, okay, oof, there's a wrinkle popping up. Well, are they wrinkles or are they just telling our stories? Like they're almost like these beautiful scars of survival, And my aunt is a sculptor, and she always says, I'm not even interested in those Botox millennials, and they don't carry the story with them. So it affects me, definitely. What gives me comfort a little bit is that I do believe that these things are always in context. So I just stupid concept popped into my mind. Like, we see aging as losing freedom, right? Because youth is freedom and endless possibilities. And as we age, our body starts giving up, etc. While in indigenous cultures, of course, we associate wrinkles with wisdom. And that's another kind of freedom, because we start making sense of life and we have something to offer to the people around us. And if we would see it like that in our culture as well, then we would go to the Botox doctor when we are 20 to ask, can you put me some artificial wrinkles? So if I put it in context, it all starts to become completely insane. If Rubens was painting voluptuous women like they were the most beautiful women in the world, or tanning used to be not a status symbol. Like for us, it's a status symbol because you're traveling, means you have freedom, means you have the money to travel, la di la. But for them, it was connected to slavery because you were working on the land. So, of course, you're going to be dark tanned. If I put it all into context, then actually, what is it still? What is the meaning of it all? It doesn't have a lot of meaning. Um, and for me, I don't know about you, but menopause is a word that's being brought to us as something big and scary. And I fear it as well. Like it's gonna come and I'm fearing it. But you know what? When I had my first period, I was fearing that. I remember that in school, boys were teasing you, like, are you already bleeding or not? And you were ashamed of it. And getting your first tampons on the supermarket in the supermarket was a walk of shame. And now when I look at my period, I think that's the most sacred thing in the world. Like the beauty of being able to bleed. But I couldn't look at it like that back then. So isn't it the same with the menopause where now I'm afraid of it and dreading it? And am I going to be on my deathbed looking back at it and thinking that's such a sacred phase as well in a women's life? Like, can I put context to it to give it less meaning? Or I don't know, but I do feel like it's society whispering in our ear, or men maybe whispering in our ear. And again, it doesn't, even if it's just projection, then it's still there, it's still valid, that we are less worthy if we're not able anymore to bear a child. Am I less of a woman? Am I.
Yeah, I also think about aging. And so the programming, right, is anti-aging. And we have always been programmed, at least I've got such a feeling, to be beautiful, to look beautiful, which is nothing wrong if you do take care and look well after yourself. But somehow it almost became our identity. If I'm not beautiful, that I might not feel great. I might not be valued for who I am, right?
Yeah.
And then this is where, when it comes to the wrinkles, if I do have wrinkles on my face, I'm not going to be beautiful anymore. People are not going to like me.
Yeah.
Um, However, looking at the aging as a wonderful process of having more time gone, receiving more wisdom, more experience, going through much more situations. I do admire women who don't dye their hair, and I do follow a few on Instagram. I do love to watch their stories. I do love to see the energy. Excuse me. I do love to see the energy and how aspiring they are, how they reminding us that it's not about the way you look always, right? You're much more than your body.
I always say the world will go blind tomorrow. How are you going to impress them? You know, it's
Yeah. And we've got to change that belief that we don't give any value if we are not young or we are not looking beautiful. It's actually the opposite. The older we get, the more value we give to the world.
Yeah.
And I think it's all also about the corporate world. When they started hiring more and more of young people. So elder people were in danger of losing their jobs. And it created a fear, it created competition. And in the book FOMO by Patrick McGuinness, he does mention the story, if I'm correct, and this is the book where I read it from. He mentions a story about insecurities and how sometimes a CEO who is younger can create uncomfortable situations with people who are older and more senior to him, let's say. And yeah, it's a fascinating and at the same time unusual world or times that we're living in. I don't even look at the menopause yet. I'm not really afraid of that because I know my mom and my grandmothers went really well through that. So I don't have any fear built around that area, luckily. But yeah, anti-aging is something that I do believe touches every second or every third or even every second woman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we can change the narrative that's there. You know,
Yeah.
we can make a fist to that. It's,
I would like women who are watching us at least to remember that you're valued and you're worthy of a beautiful life, of an amazing career, a wonderful partner, no matter whether you've got gray hair or not.
Yeah.
And this particular woman that I admire, she, when she refused to dye her hair, her husband was so against it. He couldn't really understand it until she started showing him and proving him that she knows her value. And it comes from within. It doesn't really depends on the hair or the botox that she would do or she wouldn't.
I had a guy, a mutual friend of ours, actually, that asked me a few days ago, "What is your most beautiful body part?" And I said, without any hesitation, my brain. 100% my brain. You know.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I felt that in when it comes to dating, sometimes I had this pressure that I had to show my brain that I'm not just a body, I'm not just an object, or like when it comes to sexuality as well.
Yeah.
I'm also a human being, and I do have.
Wouldn't that be like if you're looking for the definition of intimacy, and we always see intimacy as something sexual and the flesh intertwining and everything, but at the same time, I think um, like real intimacy is standing in front of each other naked and whispering in each other, "You give me more." You know, it is like stripping down to your core and showing who you really are, and it's nothing to do with your physicality. You know, so
Yeah, I do believe more intimacy comes when the partner get together and they talk, they communicate well, they start finding out things about each other. That's why I love the human design game, because it's the authenticity, it's the vulnerability, and also that intimacy that is happening there. So you can actually meet someone when they peeled off their masks completely, or their shields that they were protecting themselves with.
yeah.
And suddenly you don't need to go to 200 days. And it happened to me. I met someone who mentioned that to me recently, just a few days ago.
Hmm.
So that person told me they've been to 200 or even 250 dates.
Hmm.
And obviously, it's all connected to their beliefs. Why would they always meet people
Hmm.
that would just validate their belief?
Hmm.
How do I put it in words? So yeah, it's just the reflection of what was inside, right?
Yeah.
Because if you have got certain beliefs in you and conditions, of course your outer world is just going to be reflection of your inner world. So wherever you believe inside, the outer world is like a mirror. If you believe there are no great men in this world, they're all cheating, or all women are gold diggers, then obviously who are you going to attract? You do attract the person according to your own beliefs.
Of course. I mean, there's a saying as well that a thief thinks that the whole world steals, you know?
Exactly.
So this is
So coming back to the game, why I love it, and Chris will be Christian, who created the game, will be the next person that I would love to do the podcast with, and he's a creator of a human design game. How wonderful that we do have such a tools that we can sit, and how many people I have met through the game, like you are just the proof of that. And how wonderful is the intimacy without taking close first. And then when you connect on that profound level and you do see each other values, and you see that it's just you're on the same page. That's how I believe we should attract our partners.
it's as well the thing what you said about carrying that mask, you know, like there's a saying that the samurai says, which I tweaked a little bit because I don't completely agree with it, but they say you have three faces. There's one face that we show to the whole world, then there's one face that we show to our loved ones, family, and then there's one face that we show to the mirror. And I don't agree with that because I believe that the definition of love is that face what you show to the mirror, that there's somebody sitting on your shoulder and speaking with you to that mirror, you know, like that is what real love is. And it is opening that dusty closet with all the skeletons in it, and somebody even not only loving those parts of you that you think are unlovable, but maybe even loving you because of those parts, you know? It's
Yeah, showing your authentic self is an act. It is actually an act of love towards yourself and towards another person. That's what I was trying to do when I was dating. I would show myself from both sides, which was also crazy at the times. But I believe that I don't want to go through the stage where 6 or 8 months everything is perfect and we're acting um, and taking the role according what we believe another person would like us to be. And then suddenly the honeymoon is ended, and
But I
all
wonder,
the shadows would come
if
out.
it really was a honeymoon then, because that's as well a way to look at it. If I have thick skin, because I'm not really showing myself, the person cannot hurt me, cannot reject me, fine. But the person can also never really love you.
They would love the image of you they've imagined, they've created in their and
Well, that's
formed in
maybe
their
your
heads.
projection because it's not sure if that's really true, but it's a projection of us that we create this persona which is lovable, you know? But if you never let that guard down, there is as well no true connection because it's two people wearing masks, trying to connect. So I believe that that's where the key is. And it's all, if you watch Harry Potter, I'm a big Harry Potter fan. You have Voldemort, who is like, he dissociates from any human genuine connection, and even love can hurt him, and you kind of become a Voldemort because you're not able to really feel. So I wish that I mean, for me, as I said in the beginning of the podcast, I wear my pain and it's on the table. And this is what it is. Take it or leave it, like it's quite a simple equation, but of course it's not that simple as that, unfortunately. But yeah,
Mm.
it's how when we are young, when we are maybe we are at our purest form when we are 6 and 80, because in between we have all these kind of things that are trying to derail us from who we really are. Society, shame, inner negative voice. And then we always say, yeah, what do you whisper in the ear of your 6-year-old self? And the question is, maybe our 6-year-old selves to talk to us. It's the other way around. Because maybe they have more advice because we are completely derailed, drifting away from who we really are. And as a 6-year-old, when I'm drawing, I'm having a pink elephant and green ocean, and I'm just me, unapologetically. I'm just expressing. And then as we grow older, that elephant becomes gray and it stays gray. Um, so yeah, I believe as well that there's maybe something there, like connecting to that.
I like that. Yeah. So going back to that child full of curiosity, full of not only exploring the world, but creating the world around you, right? That's a beautiful approach.
Yeah.
It's the authenticity is there as well. Until we are not criticized and judged by the others, and this is where the comparison comes from.
Yeah.
And any fears of being criticized and judged, because there is no baby that would be comparing itself to another baby. Like my skin is worse or eyes bigger. There is no comparison, right? Children, especially babies, when they're born to this world, they deeply believe they are lovable, they are enough, they can achieve anything at all.
There's boundless. The world is boundless.
Yeah, and boundless possibilities.
Yeah.
And then that beliefs is like a set of beliefs we're born with, which is vast. Suddenly it begins narrowing as as we get older, years are passing by, and what we are being hypnotized.
Elephant is gray.
And the elephant cannot be pink.
Yeah.
Because in our reality, it's gray.
I love as well the story that there's a kid in a crib and the window is open and a hummingbird flies in. And the kid looks at it and it's kind of psychedelic experience. It is beautiful and stunning and everything. And then the mother comes in and he says, "That's a bird, baby." And then it's just a bird.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just if we understand how everything is, how we are so boundless and limitless, that's where the beauty comes. But
Yeah.
I think it's a path because we are unlearning. So as we are younger, we are getting all these beliefs and we are learning all these false beliefs. And then there comes this kind of turning point in life where you start unlearning.
Yeah. And to silence that inner critic inside, I would actually take your advice to go back to the childhood where you didn't know anything but your own world, and changing your world's perspective and how and the connection that you've had to yourself at that time, right?
Yes.
That love, love that was already there and you were naturally connected to it, that self-belief, that healthy self-esteem and confidence.
How the kid dances in any occasion. Doesn't matter where, the supermarket, the parking lot, the kid is dancing and it doesn't matter who's watching, you know, like
they're just having fun.
They're just having fun and they're reacting on their inner gut. This is what I want to do. I want to feel freely. I feel myself and I'm going to take off my shoes and I'm going to dance in an aisle bare feet in the supermarket, you know. And then, of course, the mother comes to put on the shoes and everything again, you know, how things go. But, you know, Alanis Morissette did sing in one of her songs. She says, to whom do I need to apologize in life? Actually, there's never been anybody crueler to me than me.
That's so
And that
true.
really, like, that hits home. Oh.
And cruel to yourself, and also that inner critic that is horrible, that somehow on the way to our adulthood we just keep building, and rejection. How often we do reject ourselves. Until we understand one day I've got to stop doing it. Christiana, it is absolutely wonderful to talk to you.
We did it 2 times. It's a little bit of a deja vu because we already recorded one when it was raining.
Yes,
But
the jungle
now it's beautiful weather in the jungle. Yeah, we're sitting here as well. I live in a beautiful villa, which I always wanted to live in, these big creative houses after growing up in this orphanage where there was like no love. And I always thought like, oh, I wanted to have a house that's like bursting with laughter. And, you know, there's everywhere, there's pieces of the board game that you will find in the weirdest places. And there is spaghetti sauce dripping off the walls. And there's like people can dance on my dinner table after they have had dinner, because why not, you know? And I also like to have like under my roof just this kind of creativity of everybody to express themselves and to move freely. And I think this podcast as well has been beautiful to do.
Thank you so much for sharing your space with the others, because we also had the chance to play here the human design game, and you opened the door to your beautiful villa to so many people. And thank you for your hearts to be so open. That inner child, you know, alive within.
I'm handing it over, all these beautiful brushes to the inner child to paint such a beautiful today. You know, it's possible. It's I don't know, that inner wounded child is a pretty darn happy kid. In hindsight, in retrospective, in a butterfly effect, like that's not static, you know. So, but I also want to thank you, because your hypnotherapy sessions as well have been really beautiful and a part of that healing as well. So thank you for that.
Thank you for your trust. Keep me updated. How things going on your side after the session. I'm pretty sure it's going to change. Thank you.